All right. Good morning. My name is Michelle Ford, and today is Tuesday, March 14th. It's 10:02 a.m. Pacific time, and this is now what? So my hope today is that you'll leave with a solid foundation about who we are and what we're doing here and how we have the authority to do all this, and also to give you a really solid foundation and also some next steps. So we'll a little bit about who's in charge and what is this thing called self-governance and education, assembling locally and staying focused. So first and foremost, we are of the United States of America. We are the de jure Republican form of government, and we are lawfully and properly assembling. And I'm going to do a presentation, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So, our Constitution. This is a quote from John Adams from 1798, and he says, "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people." Now, notice the uppercase P, because we're going to talk about that a little bit. "It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." And I just want to start with that uppercase P is in relation to the people who are actually doing, rolling up their sleeves and doing the work of assembling, right? Which people can get their paperwork done and just go off and go be free Americans and leave like the government work, which I don't like to use that word because it is not a happy word when you're trying to be self-governing. I just don't know what other word to use. But we are, there's uppercase P people, and those are the people doing the actual work of governing. And then there's the free people. That's everybody else, right? So those that are called to be uppercase P people, that's who John Adams is talking to. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear. Sometimes that word religious really kind of freaks people out. So I just want to point out, though, that we are not this popular term called sovereign citizens. That is an oxymoron, right? Because you can't be both sovereign and a citizen at the same time. But also, that's a de facto trap. The legal enforcement officers love to make the accusation that if you're a status corrected man or woman, that you are somehow part of this clique called sovereign citizen. But that's a trap. Don't fall for it. Just kindly point out that that's an oxymoron, and no, you're not part of that. Okay. All right. So what makes it possible for us to assemble? So in order to do that, you have to have a proper summoning authority. And there are 3 different ways that state assemblies may be called into session. So number 1, they may be summoned by the United States of America, our unincorporated Federation of States. 2, they may be summoned by the President of the United States of America of that same unincorporated Federation of States. We don't have one of those yet. Or number 3, a committee of 9 state assemblies may call the General Assembly into session. So under number 1, really since 2020, that's kind of the line in the sand. As of that point, all 50 states had an accountable coordinator, someone that raised their hand and said, I will help with this. I will be responsible for, getting this work done. The last time that we did this, it was in 1776. So it was a very long time ago. And when I say I'm talking about the entire country, right? So, obviously, states participated in creating their own constitutions and then becoming, part of the union, and then later having their state of state, et cetera. Every state joined the union at a different time. There was like different. I think California is the 31st, for example. So not every single state join the union at the same time. But so when I say the last time we did this, I'm speaking on a national, a countrywide level was the last time we did this. But of course, the early In 1776, when they were first forming the Union, there were only 13 colonies at that time, right? So it was really the first. So this is the way that power is supposed to flow in America, right? Where the people are in charge, and they're in charge of their local community, their city, their city subcontractors. And then of course, county, state, and like the further you get away from, where you are, the levels of government become weaker and weaker. So keep that in mind, that the people are in charge, and that's why there's no divide. There's nothing to fight over. If you really stop and think about it, there's nothing to fight over, unless there's someone in your assembly that's trying to turn you into, this system, the system that we just left, which is a top-down structure. The corporate model is like this one on the left, right? Where, as Donald Trump said, at the tippy top, right? At the tippy top is all this power over people who get stuck as persons down at the bottom. But the goal is the sort of inverted triangle all the way to the right of there, right? Where the people, again, they are in charge. Now, right now, we are in the center because the Federation of States summoned all of the state assemblies to get assembled. But we still have to answer to the Federation, which is not federal, okay? And I'll explain that a little bit later when we go over the flow chart. But the Federation is in charge until we can learn to get along and get the job done. Self-governing it's actually a very old paradigm, but it feels like it's new, right? Because we've never been free. We've been told all these years we're Americans and we're free, right? We've been lied to on so many levels. But self-governing is an old paradigm, but for us, we're restoring. So as a result, it feels like it's new. So I would like for you to consider this mindset that if it's to be, meaning if this restoration of America will succeed, I'd like you to say, like, if it's to be, it's up to me. Because collectively, we can do this. I'm 100% certain. So I love this quote from the coordinator of Michigan. So the Michigan Assembly, it's Paul Peterson, and he says, "He who does not self-educate is not truly free, and he who refuses to self-educate will never be free." And that is like so true. So I encourage you to spend some time every day, a little bit of time every day, at the end of a year is going to add up to a lot of self-directed learning and educating. It's tough when we come into an assembly and all we have is our former education about, quote, politics or government. But you have to remember that we've been completely dumbed down and lied to. So you actually do need to take time learning, because otherwise you're just going to naturally fall into old ways of being. So we have this sort of a colloquial terminology that we have on the assembly called the 4 pillars. So there's the General Assembly, the Jural Assembly, the Militia, and the International and Interstate Business Assembly. And although it sounds a lot like a 4-legged table, it looks a little bit more like this for you visual learners, right? So I'm going to use the California Assembly as the sample, but so it's everything included is the California Assembly, and fill in the blank for your state, right? And inside of that, we have the General Assembly, and then we have the 3 additional pillars, which are the International and Interstate Business Assembly, which is a state level. It's a state level assembly, but because it has international and interstate interface. And then there's the Jural Assembly, which has, it's a state level, like we can have state level courts, but it's also county level. And then there's the Militia, which also has state level office and then county level office. So Again, there's no us versus them. Notice how there's no left-right paradigm. There's no, none of that is going on. Now, the General Assembly provides a discussion and decision forum for intra-state business, so everything within the borders of your state. And it acts as a committee of the whole to decide issues of general interest, conduct elections, and provide oversight for all assembly functions. And the meetings are, generally speaking, public meetings. And if the General Assembly wishes to conduct any private or sensitive intrastate business, they simply close that portion of the agenda off so that only state nationals and state citizens can participate. So I want to point out a couple of things on this slide that sometimes lead to confusion. One of them is regarding the meetings being public meetings. So yes, our meetings are open to the public, but we read something called the Bivens decision, sometimes called the Bivens Declaration, at the top of every General Assembly meeting that we have. In fact, at the top of all of our business meetings. And that thing that we read starts out with the first sentence that says, "This meeting is private." So I want to explain why the General Assembly is also public. How is it public and private at the same time? So the Bivens decision or Bivens Declaration gives any foreign agent, or worker, an employee or agent of any law enforcement agency or public agency of the federal, state, county, city, or township agencies of the de facto, gives any of them the opportunity to announce their presence, because they have to let us know if they're observing our calls. So that's why we are private to them. They are a foreign government, but we're public to the general public. And anyone, whether they're status corrected or not, can listen in on our calls. They can't all participate, but they can certainly observe. We have nothing to hide. Now, there, again, might be sensitive things that don't apply or can't be observed. And in that case, it would have to be agendized. The other thing I want to point out is in regards to the term state citizen, right? So sometimes people immediately think when we're talking about state citizens, they sometimes think we're talking about US citizens or citizens of the United States, but we're not. We're talking about state citizens, which are the people that are tasked, with a particular role on the assembly that is either elected, or certain appointed roles would require state citizen status. Most people who start out on the assemblies are state nationals as they're learning, and then may either run for a particular office or seek appointment. So the General Assembly has subcommittees, and these subcommittees need to get populated by people who are willing to do the volunteer work. So there's the General Education Committee, new member orientation, events, records, treasury, oversight, ombudsman, vetting, general elections, and Office of the Marshal at Arms. So these are the primary subcommittees of the General Assembly that need to get filled. And by the way, all of the pillars have subcommittees, but I mostly focus on the General Assembly subcommittees at this time because that's like the first order of business for all state assemblies. So once their General Assembly is functioning, then they focus on the standing up the General Assembly. But all those General Assembly subcommittees we need to fill those. So the Business Assembly is international in nature, and it's composed entirely of state citizens. So it's international in that literally international, but also interstate. The meetings are open to state citizens who are the only ones withstanding to participate and vote on the international and interstate business under consideration. So in other words, state nationals are not able to vote at all on the International and Interstate Business Assembly. It has to be state citizens. And here's a little bit about state citizens. So state citizens voluntarily occupy an, quote, office of personhood in order to serve the interests of the international jurisdiction of their state of the union. Their lawful persons are known as uppercase P, people, right? So remember earlier at the top of the call, that quote from John Adams? Let me just pull it up again now that you have this context about state citizens. Crying out loud. Here it is. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious uppercase P people. Those are the state citizens. And it is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. So I just want to make sure that I really hit that point home because it's important. People sometimes get offended by the moral requirement to be a state citizen. All right. Now, the Jural Assembly provides the court services and oversees the grand jury, trial juries, officers, and functions of the courts. Meetings are special meetings organized by the active members of the Jural Assembly, all of whom are qualified jurors able to serve on both the grand jury and trial juries or officers of the courts. Now, I would love to give you, obviously it's voluntary, okay, but I would love to give you a homework assignment, right, to check out the Jural Assembly online and do a words, it's a PDF, so it's searchable, and search for the term qualified and read all of the places where it talks about qualified juror, okay? All right. The Assembly militia is focused on promoting public safety within the boundaries of their state, right? That lowercase s is the geographically defined state, right? So, there's trees and boulders and mountains and whatever, beaches, whatever. So it's the geographically defined location of your state. And it is the, quote, well-regulated militia guaranteed to each state for its internal security. All able-bodied members of the Assembly between the ages of 21 and 65 are expected to actively support their militia in one way or another, either as active militia or acting in support, supply, communications, and administrative positions for training and to conduct exercises and business unique to the militia. So, that's a tall order, but militia is responsible for making sure that, there's an emergency plan in place for, what if there's an emergency communication breakdown? What if there's a, train derailment with a chemical spill in your neighborhood, right? It would be your local militia that has a blueprint for success to how to deal with that. Phone trees and, emergency potable water supply, et cetera. So the militia serves a really, really important function. It's not always, it's not just about, guns and stuff like that. Okay. So there are 5 possible status options available. Okay, so on the left, number 1 and number 2, these are our American, land and soil options. So American state national and state citizen. And then to the right, number 3, number 4, number 5, these are of the federal flavor. Okay, so there's federal United States citizen. Then there's territorial United States citizen, and then there's municipal citizen of the United States. But I want to point out, because there seems to be a ton of confusion, even by senior people, who have been on the assemblies for a while, okay? So the federal United States citizen is our state of state, right? So does that make sense, what I'm saying? So our federal United States citizen, although it's federal, it is our American subcontractor as opposed to our foreign subcontractors, because we have both British, foreign British territorial subcontractor and papist municipal federal subcontractor. So we do have an American federal subcontractor as well, and that's our state of state. So I hope that makes sense. It's important to have that distinction because the federation is American, not federal. So keep that in mind. And if that gets confusing, don't worry about it. It will sink in at some point. But you can actually find this. You can actually find this citizenship chart by going to annavonrights.com/citizenship chart.pdf. And it brings me to citizenship in terms of British territorial, right? When people are on the citizen, when they are US citizens, they are British territorial subjects on the US citizenship. So when you get your status corrected and you're on the land and soil, you actually get off of that citizenship and get onto the land. So shout out to Nicole on San Diego for making this awesome visual aid of what citizenship actually looks like. Now, there are 3 branches of the American government, and then there are 3 branches of the federal government. And so up at the top, we've got the Union of States. I'm starting at the top left. Okay, we have the Union of States. So this is what Anna likes to refer to as the big kahuna, right? So what she means by that is this is the capital T United States from 1776. This is our American general public. Okay. And it's indicative of, the people of the states that are touching one another, right? So it's the people of those states that are connected. And then the Federation of States is, quote, the United States of America, right? So we added of America to this. And this is the state citizen governance in our American land and soil jurisdiction. And then we've got the Confederation. This is our states of states. So this is what got into a contract with the American subcontractor, right? So I'm really hoping that this is connecting the dots. So this is called the States of America. And then down on the bottom left, the American subcontractor again is, notice the lowercase t for the States of America, right? The Confederation was uppercase T, the States of America. So it's a proper name, the whole thing, the States of America. That's a proper noun. But on the bottom left, it's lowercase t, which is an adjective. It's not part of the name. It's describing the States of America. I mean, it's describing States of America. And then, of course, moving on, the British territorial subcontractor, also it's the lowercase t, United States of America. So United States of America starting with capital letters. And then, of course, the Papist municipal subcontractor is the United States. So this one is without of America. So ours on the bottom, our subcontractor, right? We are not a democracy. This is a Republican form of government. And then the British territorial, this is a democracy, right? So when you hear like news reporters saying things about our democracy, right? That's what they're talking about. They might not know it, but that's what they're fighting for. When they say, this is a threat to our democracy, they are talking about their foreign overlords. Okay. And then the Papist municipal, right? That's the controlled by the Vatican. And that is a plenary oligarchy. Why? Because there are multiple, they control everything in the air jurisdiction And they frankly control what's going on with the British monarchy and ultimately the military as a result. So they're way too much control. All right, now state citizens. So a national, you can't really talk about state citizen without talking about a national. So a state national owes no obligation to serve the state government. So for anyone who has an issue with, they'll say sometimes like, oh my gosh, did I just join a religious cult? Stuff like that. If you have that mindset, you should stay as a state national and then perhaps serve as a juror, when the time comes. But the state nationals are, you're free to be. But state citizens accept voluntary duty to serve their state government. And so there should be no argument about what book we're operating from here. And I'll go over public duty in a moment. But keep that in mind that, state nationals totally go be free to be, right? State citizens, though, have to accept a responsibility. The fundamental unelected voluntary office underlying the authority of our states is that of a juror, a member of the state jural assembly. Now, listen, everyone on your state has the possibility of serving as a juror, so long as they're properly status corrected. So really, everyone is a potential juror. So everyone's part of the jural assembly by nature of the future possibility of serving on a jury. And then Anna says, just so we are clear, a state national and state citizen may both claim to be, quote, Virginians or Minnesotans, but one, the state national, has no official capacity and no particular duty to serve their uppercase S state, right? So the uppercase S is your state government, your state assembly government. Now, state citizens, including the jurors making up the state jural assembly, do owe a duty to the state government according to the office that they have accepted or been elected to serve. So I hope that makes sense. Now, by joining the state jural assembly, you're agreeing to serve as a juror at some point and act in the capacity of a state citizen. This, quote, jury duty is the fundamental building block underlying the public and organic law of this country. And you can read Anna's articles. She has several called For All Jural Assemblies, and they're all PDF'd and available at annavonrights.com. Now, there is an order of restoring America, and this is the order of Reconstruction. We will rebuild the American states of states and restore the confederation of these organizations and restore that federal republic. Remember that first American subcontractor, which has been like MIA basically since the Civil War. We get to restore that. But we can't restore that without each state being functional. So the first priority of all 50 states is to build the state jural assembly with proper and lawful elections. Start with an elections committee and read this, annavonrights.com/structure. And then our next priority will be to focus on the counties, because counties, local governance is key. We've been so used to a top-down structure that sometimes it's hard to wrap our brains around the fact that, no, this is a ground-up thing. But we need a functional state court first. So we need a functional state court, and we need local governance. So these are the seats that need to get filled for your county jural assembly. So you need a county recorder, justice of the peace, treasurer, sheriff, bondsman, coroner, marshal at arms, court clerk, record keeper, 26 jurors, and you're a functional militia. So these are the sort of items you would be checking off at the county level. And I love this quote from James Madison, because you just stepped away from a government that had 80 million laws. And one of the maxims of law is that not knowing the law is still no excuse for breaking the law. So How, no wonder everyone's a criminal, because who on earth could possibly know 80 million laws? Well, remember, they're not laws at all. They're policies, they're statutes, codes, rules, regulations, ordinances, measures, mandates, etc., that apply to individuals, residents, citizens, aliens, humans, males, females, Mrs., Misters, Mrs., etc., etc. Okay. So James Madison pointed out a very long time ago that it would be of little avail to the people if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. And that is so true. And notice his lowercase p, people, right? That's why common law is for the common people. Common law is it's common sense. So your study materials are going to help you with your public duty, because you actually do have a public duty. All of us do. So your public duty, now that you're an American, is to uphold the public law. And all Americans and everyone putting their flat feet on our soil are required to uphold the public law. And nobody has any excuse sorry. Nobody has any right to complain because you're doing your public duty, and nor do they have any excuse for not doing theirs. So what is included in the public law? Now, these are your study materials. We honor the Mayflower Compact as the genesis of our form of law, the Geneva Bible as our authority for that law, the Ten Commandments as the form of law governing relations between living people, and the process of law is American common law. Now, that's different than British common law, which is often referred to as just common law. Okay. So as Americans, we have some things that are a little bit different. There's a lot of conversation about the Magna Carta. Now, the Magna Carta, although it is valuable and important, and frankly, we probably would never be here without that foundation, it is really in tune with British common law. Okay, so we've got these enhancements here, namely the Mayflower Compact, right? And our American common law. Our 10 Commandments are very important here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Mayflower Compact. Oh, sorry, one more thing I wanted to say. In addition to learning, knowing, and upholding our public law, you also have to object to evil. But how do you define evil, right? Evil is kind of an evasive, confusing thing, unless you're studying the Bible and the Ten Commandments. So that's where we learn what not to do. And also what to do. So the Mayflower Compact from November 11th, 1620, right? There's that 1111. Sometimes people say, oh, those are angel numbers. 1111, 1620. So there was just the 402nd anniversary of this. And before I read it, I want to set the tone for what life was like in 1620 for these people. Okay, so these were also known as the Pilgrims, and the Pilgrims were fleeing European countries in search of a place where they would be allowed to be free to honor God, okay, God of the Bible. They were being persecuted, and they were being outcast and maligned in their own towns and communities for their faith, their Christian faith. Okay. Now, I say Christian faith because that's the most common way that people can identify who these people were. Now, the term Christian is a man-made religion, and that is separate from the Bible. Okay, so the Bible, I've come to learn, is actually a law book. It's a law book, and it helps us to identify the laws of nature and nature's God. So but it's man that gave it it's man that put a title called Christian onto that. So keep that in mind as I'm going to read this. The other thing I want to point out about the Mayflower Compact is that, of course, they arrived, it was cold, okay? It was cold. It was in November in New England. And they had come to this realization that they may not survive winter. They were totally ill-equipped to survive winter. So the other thing is on the Mayflower, there were approximately half of the people on the boat were Christians, identifying themselves as Christians. And then approximately the other half, they were the passengers, and the other half were the people providing the safe passage. So they were like workers on the boat. And they were, quote, identified as, quote, pagan, right? So they were not identifying themselves as being beholden to the Bible. However, what ended up happening is pilgrims enrolled the pagans into adopting this like blessing from God, like in order that they would survive winter and make it through and be able to work together. They invited the pagans to adopt this protection from God and the blessings of God. And that's what happened. And that's what they did. And that's why the Mayflower Compact is so pivotal for our form of government. It's because they, America, well, I've been hearing that the term America is kind of incorrect, but more on that later. The self-governing ideology is a blessing from God. And so that's why being self-governing requires being morally upright. And so anyway, the quote, pagans adopted this mindset in order to move forward and be team players, so to speak. It wasn't that the faithful people gave up their belief in God in order to become like pagans. It was the opposite. The pagans chose to be morally upright. All right, now let's go into this further. It says that the compact was a binding covenant on the signers and future generations, establishing a form of Republican representative government under God. Implicit to the compact was the presumption that the enjoyment of economic liberties and social freedoms are predicated on the relationship between religion, public virtue, the consent of the governed through their representatives, and the rule of law under God. And this is the actual covenant. The compact. In the name of God, amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord King James, by the grace of God, of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King and defender of the faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God and advancements of the Christian faith and the honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these presents solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves together into a civil body politic for our better ordering and preservation and furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices from time to time as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general good of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names at Cape Cod the 11th of November, in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland the 18th, and of Scotland the 54th, 1620. So there you have it. It was a giant surrendering to God. All right, the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. So although this is not the Declaration of Independence, okay, the Declaration of Independence is a incredible document. So if you have not read it in a while, you guys pull it out, read it. It is such an incredible document. And it reminded me recently about what what a blessing this is to get to do this. So please check it out. It accomplished several things. And these, for me, are the highlights. It announced the separation of the 13 North American British colonies from Great Britain, right? Because originally those colonies were British territories. That people have certain unalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that all men are created equal, and that people have a duty to defend these rights for themselves and others. Also, the Northwest Ordinance, July 13th, 1787. So now it established a territorial government first, and it had these three parts, the second of which contains three parts. So number one, it divided the Northwest Territory into not less than 3, nor more than 5 states. Notice the uppercase S. A 3-stage method for admitting a new state to the Union, which include, number one, a congressionally appointed governor, secretary, and 3 judges to rule in the first phase. An elected assembly and 1 non-voting delegate to Congress to be elected in the second phase when the population of the territory reached 5,000 free male inhabitants of full age. And number 3, a state constitution to be drafted and membership to the Union to be requested in the third phase when the population reached 60,000. And then lastly, a Bill of Rights protecting religious freedom, the right to a writ of habeas corpus, the benefit of trial by jury, and other individual rights. In addition, the ordinance encouraged education and forbade slavery. Okay. So notice that it says benefit of trial by jury. That is not the same as jury trial. You know, the British territorials always mirrored what we do, or they change words slightly to get us confused. Ours is trial by jury. All right. Our governing principles are the 10 commandments. Now, the first 5 I summarized by saying, these are how you honor our Creator. And so I'm going to read these. These are directly from the Geneva Bible. I used to summarize these, but my Bible study teacher reminded me, oh, no, you can't do that. You've got to leave them as they are. There's actually apparently somewhere in the Bible where it teaches us that you're not to alter the Bible, but I didn't get to that part yet. So, okay, number 1, thou shalt have none other gods before me. In other words, not me, Michelle. Okay. What it means is the number one thing to keep on your mind and on your heart at all times is that you keep God in first place. Okay. Don't worship anything other than him. Okay. Thou shalt make thee no graven image, neither any similitude of things that are in the heaven above, neither that are in the earth beneath, nor that are in the waters under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down to them, neither serve them, for I am the Lord thy God. Again, not Michelle Ford. Okay. Thirdly, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. Now, name deserves a study. Okay, just the term name needs a little bit of study because it's so much more than just his name. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be prolonged upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. And then the remaining 5, I summarized by saying, this is how you respect your neighbor. And I don't just mean your next door neighbor. I mean like your fellow man and fellow woman around, fellow men and fellow women around the world. Okay. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. And lastly, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, neither shalt thou covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maid, nor his ox, nor his ass, neither anything that is thy neighbor's. So basically, don't be jealous, right? Don't be jealous. That's my summary, but you got to read it in its entirety there. All right. The Geneva Bible 1560, this is where our authority to be a free country and a free people originated. And this is our law book. So there's a certain amount of surrendering that has to happen to get over this idea that it's religious. And it's important not to take the scriptures out of context. All right, now this is called the Faith Monument. It's also known as the Forefathers Monument, right? So the cornerstones are liberty, morality, law, and education, right? But we know that law stands for land, air, and water. And all of the natural law that relates to those jurisdictions. And then, of course, education. Additionally, the primary statue is pointing up to God, And this is important because this is probably why the British territorials did not want any attention drawn to the Faith Monument. There's been a slow degradation with the law. This is in Pennsylvania. Wait, is it Pennsylvania? Yeah, Pennsylvania. Plymouth Rock. Also, some goals of our assembly. So the first and foremost goal of any actual government is to protect the people and their private assets. By the way, notice the lowercase p people. That would be state nationals. Okay, so the role and the goal of the people who choose to serve on the assembly in an uppercase P state citizen capacity is to protect their people and their private assets. Make sure that their rights are protected, right? The second goal is to protect, promote, and develop the public resources of this country. So our infrastructure and our institutions, ports, roads, bridges, rail systems, schools, universities, public lands. So keep in mind that we are here to serve everyone's best interest, including our own. We are the owner operators. And I have this brief video from Anna. This is a message directly from our fiduciary.
This is our responsibility to enforce the public law because we are the public. We have the public duty to take action, and we're doing so. Here in America, we are making the effort. And I invite everybody worldwide to join that effort, see the problem, and put an end to it now. Thanks much, everybody. Thank you, Arturo. Thank you, the film crew. Thank you, everybody listening. Go forth and do what you can to correct and restore and assist and serve in good faith the best interests of humanity and the best interests of your country and the best interests of your people.
There you have it. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that everybody on this call knows who Anna von Reitz is, but just in case you don't know that she has been at this for almost 45 years trying to wake people up to this. So she's been systematically, day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year, holding that line that we restore America. And so you may come across internet articles that vilify her or cast aspersions or doubt. And everyone's on their own learning journey. But I can tell you what, everything this woman does is transparent and free. So anytime you read an article that is somewhat disparaging or casting aspersions against her, go to her website, because every single allegation against her, she has explained what really happened, what, the outcomes, etc. So definitely check out her articles first if you have any questions. All right, let's not forget about our 3 public laws and international notice on the federal record. So number 1, the International Peace Proclamation and Grand Peace Treaty. Now, listen, remember the Civil War. So first of all, that was not actually a war. War was never formally declared by Congress. In a nutshell, what that was a dispute, a conflict, a mercenary conflict actually, between our British territorial subcontractors and our municipal subcontractors. So at the end of the day, they figured out that if they work together, then they'll be more powerful than our American Republic, right? So because of that conflict never being declared as a formal war, and that there never was a formal peace proclamation ending that war, the U.S. And the quote United States of America, the incorporated versions, okay, those governments have been at war ever since. Okay, we've been in this constant state of emergency since the Civil War, essentially. And so the British territorials and the Papist municipals have been able to justify all of their actions by being in constant warfare. Our jurisdiction declared peace on the land. And this is so huge because our action ended any presumption of war. So there are no more emergency authorities over you because you are properly status corrected. So now you're in your proper place, in your proper jurisdiction among the living. So this is huge. And so use that. If you're ever being bombarded or threatened by people that are at war with you, print out the Grand Peace Treaty and remind them that you are not at war. And that's what we're doing here. We're standing for doing this peacefully. We're not at war. All right, the public law A1010121. Now, this is also important, particularly, okay, if you've taken the jab. And I think you know what I'm talking about, okay? So the jab contains spike protein. It also contained mRNA technology, messenger RNA. So messenger RNA can go in and modify your body's naturally occurring DNA and RNA. Ribonucleic, okay, I forget what it stands for. Ribonucleic acid. But here's the thing, the Supreme Court decided in 2013 that if a company can successfully modify DNA, which is RNA and DNA are both in all of your cells, okay, if they could effectively modify your genes, they have a certain ownership over their property. So a lot of people did not know about that 2013 Supreme Court decision, but this public law nullifies any presumption of ownership over your body if you took that product. So this is also huge, okay? So keep that in mind in case you ever need to defend yourself against any of these war presumptions against you. And then, of course, the notice to the Office of the Prosecutors in the International Court. You guys should read Anna's articles and read her public notices. And by the way, anything that gets put up on that section that says federal record, all of that applies to you and it's out there. They know. So this isn't a surprise to any of our subcontractors. I mean, it might be to the local ones because it's our job to notify them locally, right? The international community has been totally notified. They know everything that we're doing. And same thing with the federal subcontractors. They know what we're doing, which is probably why they're doubling down on their efforts right now and trying to make it worse. But again, locally, you have to notify your local public servants. That would be your city council, your local school board, your county board of supervisors, your local courts. You might have a superior court in your area or district court, right? You might have a Secretary of State's office on your county, of which I do, et cetera, right? So who you need to notify are those people on your own behalf. And we have a packet here called the American Relief and Remedy Packet. It's about 20 pages, and it's educational in nature. It's simply an education for your public servants. So you would add your own cover letter so that they know it's coming from you, and you would either hand deliver it to your government subcontractor employees, or you could send it by registered return receipt mail. That's the most expensive way to do it. You could do priority mail, right? But the goal is to make sure that they get it so that you can begin the education process locally, because they need to know, oh my gosh, there's a bona fide living man, living woman, American in my area. I had no idea. And who knows, they might even contact you and go, I want to be free too. This was an awesome education, So use the packet. Oh, and there's actually one of the last pages is the printable Z plate. It's the, Z regulation plate, and you can actually, put it in your car, put it on your home. It tells them that you're not operating in commerce any longer. So we also can't continue to be afraid of the de facto government, right? These government subcontractors, they're foreign in nature, and they perpetuate this top-down system. So now that you're American, you have authority over your own life. No one can tell you how to be or not be. So, you're an American state national. The only laws that are applicable to you, and I'll show you this in a second, are the laws of nature, and nature's God. So keep that in mind. I can't boss you around, tell you what to do or what not to do. You're a free man or a free woman. Now, if you're a state citizen, then that's a different status. That's an uppercase P people. And I need to make sure that we assemble lawfully and properly. Now what? All right, here are some logistical next steps for you. This is the now what part. So first and foremost, you're going to cancel your voter registration with your county secretary of state on every county of every state that you've ever lived. Okay. Ever been a registered voter on. Okay. So be sure to do that. You've got to pull yourself out of that system. Additionally, you'll send a declaration of political status, either original embossed copy or a photocopy of an original embossed document, to the Secretary of State on the state of your nativity where you were born and the state where you live now. And then to Antony Blinken, the address is there in Washington, D.C. You'll also send one to the Assistant Secretary, Rena Bitter. She's at the Bureau of Consular Affairs. Same address, but it's in black just beneath there. Also, if and when you're ready, if is a big one, okay, you'll have to study whether or not you're eligible to submit letters of revocation of your election to pay taxes to both the IRS and to the Internal Revenue Service. So again, make sure that you're ready, because you don't want to get yourself in any kind of trouble if you don't know how to deal with it. And if you don't have all the appropriate contracts terminated. You'll also need to notice the trustees, meaning you'll put the trustees on notice. So there's a federal level trustee, a state level trustee, and your regional level trustee. So we have to notify the trustees because they are there to protect Americans when they return from their foreign status as a piece of property of the foreign territorial and municipal subcontractors. All right, you'll also need to get a new passport as a non-citizen, and you can get directions on how to do that by going to tinyurl.com/state national passport. And Summer on Florida put together a video using the Copper Moonshine Stills directions. So Summer did everybody a great service by putting it into a video. Thank you, Summer. Also, in order to travel, right, you should have that non-citizen passport because the British territorials still run the ports, the airports, the seaports, and the border crossings. So until we can fully restore our government to full function, right now, the other territorials are still running the ports. So you might need their hall pass to get through their ports. And so you can use a non-citizen passport in lieu of a real ID. And the evidence for that, the evidence for my claim about that is right here, dhs.gov/real-id/r-u-real-id-ready. Okay, you'll also convert your business into private capacity, and I'll show you where to find how to do that towards the end of the call. You'll step down from any de facto public positions if you want to be a state citizen. Okay, you can't have dual, quote, allegiance to your state and to the public of the de facto system at the same time. Also, you'll follow the next steps and chart your course at the TASA website, and you'll also do your baby deeds if you have children. Now, about licenses. So the acceptance of a license in whatever form will not impose upon the licensee an obligation to respect or to comply with any provision of the statute or with the regulations prescribed that are repugnant to the Constitution of the United States. Now, of course, this is a US code, but it's important to note that because licenses apply in that jurisdiction. So if you have a professional license or a driver's license or something like that, it's just reminding you that there's still the supreme law of the land, which is the contract between the living people that created it and the subcontractors that must abide by it. And you can find that at Anna's article, annavonrights.com/Merry Christmas. Now, if you're married and have a marriage license, it's highly recommended that you get the government out of your marriage by removing your signature from your marriage license application. Okay, so there's a marriage license signature removal document that is available for you. It's a template that you could use. You would fill in all of the red areas shown tailor it to your needs, and then simply change the color to black. And then you'll autograph it in the presence of a notary. And then you'll turn it into the agency that issued your marriage license. All right, how to do a byline and an autograph. So within the white box, this whole thing is called a byline, but let's go over the different features because there is a difference between an autograph and a byline. So byline includes all of these features, starting with by, colon, and then the line, and then the copyright symbol, the autograph above, the seal on the family name, and then all rights reserved without prejudice beneath the line. Okay, so that whole thing is called a byline. But the autograph, again, is just what's above the line with the copyright symbol. So the autograph, that's just an autograph. And it contains a legible full name, all parts of your name. So in this example, that means Jane Marie Doe. And you'll notice that it's either print, like as in Jane, or it's in script where the letters actually connect to one another, as in Marie. And you'll also notice that it's in blue ink. You'll also notice that the first initial of each part of the name is uppercase. So all of those features are necessary. The seal is not always necessary. You would definitely use a seal and a byline if you're going to engage in a declaration, an affirmation, if you're going to get into some sort of a, man to man, woman to woman contract like that, but just keep in mind, you'll be using your discretion for the most part about when to use an autograph as opposed to when to use a byline. Also, in terms of depositing instruments, this is a hot item these days because of these bank bail-ins. Have you been hearing about the banks that have been going bust? Well, whenever you deposit instruments into a bank or credit union, you have the option, now that you're American, of converting your money into lawful money. That would be a two-line dollar symbol, right? Lawful money. It doesn't happen automatically. You have to invoke it by endorsing the back of the instrument properly. So that would be, I have a stamp for mine, and it's got a somewhat of a byline. It's got the word by, the colon, the line, and the copyright symbol at the end. And it says, all rights reserved, redeemed, 12 USC 411 in lawful money. So 12 USC 411 relates to state chartered banks or credit unions. We highly recommend you get away from these national level and in some cases international level banks. They are very egregious. And the minute you make a deposit of your money, and they don't seem to have to honor anything. They're the ones that are engaging in this FDIC insurance, right? So FDIC insurance basically means that the bank is insured for every account that has, 100,000, 200,000? I forget what the number is, but anyway, it means that they're insuring themselves for your deposits, not you. So anyway, keep that in mind. And then, of course, now that you've gotten your status corrected, you're also eligible to do the mutual offset credit exchange exemption. We refer to this as the MOCHI, which is a acronym, right? MOCHI. And it involves a strategy for doing debt redemption. And we have several videos down at the bottom. The links are there, and we can put them into the chat. We don't really do MOCHI video number 1 anymore, but we do MOCHI video 2, 3, and 4. And in their entirety, these 3 videos will teach you how to get your own banker's stamp so that you can offset your debt, and gives full instructions on how to do it. All right. And then what do you do? Well, this one is just a Michelle Says, okay? Cancel your television subscription. Cancel it. You do not need to pay any more for your brain to be indoctrinated into the matrix. So I say unplug, keep your money, and instead spend that time studying. All right. Here are those additional assembly resources that I promised, right? So there's AnnaVonRights.com. Here you'll find weekly articles. She's a prolific author, almost 4,100 articles and 5 books. So great. Plus her search feature is really robust and very, very user-friendly. So you can type in keywords and find any subject, pretty much any subject she's touched on. Also, that's where you can find a PDF copy of the Jural Assembly Handbook, where you could do that study we talked about state qualified juror. Also, you could study about state citizen. You can find job descriptions for all the different Jural Assembly roles, etc. Also, Coordinator's Handbook. That's another good one because we all have to hold our coordinators accountable for doing the right thing and getting the job done. and also guide them, right? Coordinators have a really tough job, and um, you can help them. When I read this coordinator handbook so long ago, there might be stuff that I forgot. That if I say something wrong, I'm inviting you to pick up the phone and contact me, or text me, or email me, or whatever. Tell Thomas to tell me, Michelle got that wrong. And there's absolutely no shame in being course corrected. So please course correct me if you see I did something wrong in our jurisdiction. Okay. People sometimes course correct me with de facto stuff, and I'm like, that's not my jurisdiction. Okay. Constitutional enforcement seminar. So good. That was actually a class that Anna put together to teach law enforcement officers about our jurisdiction. So it's super great. And then here's that TASA website that I was telling you about earlier. Very, very, very helpful information there. Tons of educational tools. That's where the chart your course is that I was telling you about earlier about, the IRS letters. That's where you can find your marriage signature removal document. That's where you'll find the converting your business into private, or like, let's say you want to start a business in the private, there's instructions on that. So really, really helpful. Also, you can find the link for Anna's Monday night webinars. Now, this is our California Assembly website, but if you're calling in from another state right now, that top link where it says california.americanstatenationals.org, instead of California, you would simply put your state, and it's consistent across all 50 states. And then, of course, if you want to engage online in social media, this is the Real California Assembly website, Telegram website, Telegram channel. And then we also have a Facebook group, so feel free to check those out. Also, we have important calls that you would hopefully like to tune into. Here's Anna's webinar. This is the direct link. And then, actually, wait. This one's if you want to go back and look at the other ones, but you can also engage in Monday night webinars, 6:00 p.m. Pacific, Mondays. And then join your state assembly calls and your county calls and your rural assembly calls. Just get yourself immersed in your assembly if you would like to participate. We need people that want to volunteer. And volunteering isn't for everybody because of the public duty. But we need people. We can't have a we the people government without actually the people. And then General Assembly meetings. I don't know how active your state is, but California is pretty active. And so we would, you're invited to listen in on our state assembly, General Assembly calls. And then, of course, Thomas is the moderator now for our Wednesday night General Assembly meetings. And the link to our General Assembly is down at the bottom, and it starts at 7:30 on Wednesdays. And again, that's Pacific time. To come to Common Law 101, which is Thursday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific. So please invite them. It's a great third-party validator to what you've been trying to explain to them. And, many people have expressed that attending the Common Law 101 class was a pivotal moment for them. So maybe that can help you grow your community of friends and family and neighbors. So just invite them. It's a very low pressure class, and they will have the opportunity to ask questions at the end.